that. As we started last week, we took proverbial life from being all the issues around life. We took it home. And last week we started by talking about marriage, husbands and wives. And if you missed that message and you're married or you're going to be married soon, I would highly, highly encourage you, please go back and look. It's online. It's on our YouTube page. Go back and catch that message, because there's a lot of truth from God's word on establishing a godly marriage that I think may be helpful. So you can check that out. This week we're going to go from mom and dad as husband and wife to mom and dad as mom and dad and the kids in our home. So we're looking at parents and kids. And I want to start by saying, for myself, I have loved being a dad. I honestly do. I love being a dad. Each stage brings something that's fun and exciting, and yet at the same time, each stage brings something that is a challenge to parenthood. How many of us don't like that newborn baby and you first get to bring it home and they're so small? I miss holding a newborn baby. I don't miss not sleeping. Joys and challenges of the season of life. Remember when your kids get old enough and they start school, and you watch them and maybe they're going off to school or however school may look for you, but you realize your kids are growing up. And you see this season of life and there's a joy in it, but there's challenges too. When I first went to school, my parents told me this, I don't remember, but I got off the school bus, I walked in the house and I walked up to my dad. I said, "Dad, I got two things to tell you. One, I don't like school. Two, I'm not going back." My dad looked at me and said, "Jack, I got two things to tell you. One, you're going to like it, and two, you're going back." So the second day I go to get on the bus, and my mom, as I'm getting off the bus the second day, my mom's right there, and she was nervous for me, and I don't know what happened between day one and day two, but I got off the bus and I'm like, "Mom, can't you wait at home like the other moms?" I mean, I was going to go grab some milk with the guys, and we were going to hang out. This is kind of killing that. And I asked her to walk on the other side of the road. I'm like in kindergarten. There's joys and challenges with each stage. Then they head off into middle and high school. And Lord knows that season comes with some challenges. Mark Twain once wrote that when a child turns 12, you should put them in a barrel and drill a hole to give them food and water. And when they turn 16, plug the hole. And yet at the same time, it's that middle and high school age where life goes from being a child, you see them start becoming a young man or a woman, and the things they face in life start to be real life. And what their friends are going through, they have to choose. Are they going to stand on what you've raised them on? Are these principles going to be their own? They're trying to start navigating things within culture and society and even the chemistry in their own body. And my kids, I'll tell you, in their high school years, there's challenges as they're figuring stuff out, but I love some of the conversations I've been able to have with my high school kids. Just the open door and the talks we've had. Then there's the college years, and I've had two children who have left our home and gone off to campus, and when you drop them off for the last time and you watch them walk into the dorm, there's just tears and snot everywhere. It's heartbreaking. It's tough, but then the phone calls come and you hear how they're becoming a young man or woman apart from home, and you pray for the choices they have to make and what goes on in the dorms. It's a celebration and a challenge, and now I've just stepped into the phase where my kids are getting married, and that's something totally different. How many parents do we have in the room? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, there's a number of you in here. So you can relate to some of what I'm talking about. And as we look at what Solomon has to say from the book of Proverbs, the first thing I'll tell you is he does not address each of these stages of life. What Solomon does is he looks at parenting and he looks at childhood. And he gives us some clear-cut truths about both. But one of the things that he makes very clear from the get-go is you need wisdom to be a parent. And all the parents in the room can say amen to that one. You need wisdom to parent children. And that wisdom is found, and we're going to look at the same verse we've started every passage in, that wisdom, or every message in the series in, that wisdom is found in an understanding of godly wisdom. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6. Let's say the address together, and then can we all quote this verse? Proverbs 3, 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding, and he will make your paths straight. So how do we as parents and as children live in wisdom in our homes? Let's start the conversation by talking to parents. And parents, I want to use as our launching passage, Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 6. It's on the screens. It's also on your outlines. This is going to be our outline passage for what wisdom is applied for parents. It says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it. There's some key words in this passage that I want to really hone in on, and the first one is the first word in the verse, and that's the word train. Parents, one of our primary tasks with our children is to instruct them, train them in the way they should go. It's one of the main points in the book of Proverbs. We have a responsibility to train, instruct, direct, guide our children. We teach them, we lead them well. When they're younger, we have the opportunity to speak more into their life. And then as they grow up, the foundation we've laid, it gives us the right to speak in because they've seen consistency in our lives first. You see, the instruction we give isn't just with our words, it's with our lives. Does what we say and what we do match? Does mom and dad at church look the same as mom and dad at home? We instruct them in the way they should go. Proverbs 4, verses 1 through 5. This is the first passage from the scriptures we'll look at together. Proverbs 4, 1 through 5, page 451. Solomon writes, "Listen, my sons, to a father's instruction. Pay attention and gain understanding. I give you sound learning, so do not forsake my teaching. For I too was a son to my father, still tender and cherished by my mother. Then he taught me, and he said to me, take hold of my words with all your heart. Keep my commands, and you will live. Get wisdom, get understanding. Do not forget my words or turn away from them." Once again, this is an ongoing theme in Proverbs. Parents, we train, we teach, we instruct, we lead. Mom and dad, lead your homes well. Lead your homes well. Parents are an ongoing example to their children. Proverbs 17 and verse 6, it says, "Children's children are a crown to the aged, and parents are the pride of their children." Parents are the pride of their children. Parents, I want you to hear this. Your children want to be proud of you. Your children want to be proud of you. They want to look up to you. They want to see someone they can emulate. And some of you are saying, I have high schoolers. I have middle schoolers. Not so sure about that one. Right now, you may be in a season of eye rolls and, Mom, Dad. I'm telling you, your children want to be proud of you. From when they're young and as they grow up and as they grow older, they look back at you and realize you knew a thing or two. They want to be proud of you. Live a life that they can emulate. Live a life that they can be proud of. Your instruction and your example will outlive you. It's part of the inheritance you give them. Train them, direct them, guide them. You set the example. And I would say, too, to all of you grandparents in the room, you are a part of this. You are a part of passing on the heritage of what God has established in your home. It will outlive you. How many of you in the room have someone who may have already passed? They may have passed away years ago, but their example helped set the path for your life. You can still hear their voice in your head in certain situations. Anyone have that person or those people? Okay, more than half of the room. You have someone who spoke into your life. For me, God kind of gave me this challenge. Be someone they can look up to. Set a path that they can follow. Train up a child in the way they should go. The second word we're going to look at is child. Let's talk about child then and child now because it looks very different. In the Hebrew culture in which this was written, by age 15, you were getting married, you had a job, you were probably having children. If you look at when a bar mitzvah is for a Jewish child, it's right around 12 years old. That's the point where you go from being a boy to being a man, a woman to being a lady. How many of you would think your 12-year-old would be ready to launch? It looks a little different now. Back then, who Solomon was writing to was a child. those under 12 years old. Once again, parents, that's the stage where we have the most influence with our words and with our life. I want to challenge you, though, if you are still under your parents' roof, you're still under their responsibility, you are still under their authority. You're still a child in your parents' home. We're going to touch on that in a little bit when we start talking about children. But parents, I want you to remember, this is a season where we have influence. We train up children in the way they should go. That word go is our next key word, because it's not go, just get out of my way, get out of my hair, go. It is go with a directional term. It is telling them and showing them and living out the path in which they should live. It's actually an archery term. And it's the concept of letting go of an arrow toward a target. When our children look at our lives, when they hear what we say, when we talk the path for their life, we are sending them toward a target. Train up a child in the way they should go, in the direction they should live out, in the path they should take. We are our children's GPS. We help them know the path they should walk out. Proverbs chapter 20 and verse 7, it says, "The righteous lead blameless lives. Blessed are their children after them." The righteous live a blameless life, not a perfect life, but we live a life where we want to honor and follow God. Our children follow along behind us. And like little kids, as they walk through snow, trying to step in each of their parents' footsteps, their feet may be small in comparison, and they may have to jump to take the next step into your footstep, but they want to follow in the path that we're setting. They're looking at how we do it and how we walk it out, and they're looking to step in our paths. Train up a child in the direction they should go. And part of setting that direction, and this is a word that's not very well liked by children or adults in our culture, part of that direction is establishing discipline. Establishing discipline in our homes. Proverbs 19:18, it says, "Discipline your children, for in that there is hope. Do not be a willing party to their death." Help establish boundaries, guardrails, clear right and wrong. Proverbs 13 and verse 24, it says, "Whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them." And I love that word careful in there. Is careful to discipline them. All children are different. All of our children are different. You're probably different than your brothers and sisters. My children are very different from each other. If I wasn't in there when they popped out, I'd wonder if they all came from the same place. I had 4 kids, and all 4 responded very differently to discipline. I'm not going to give it to you in order, but we had one child, all you had to do was look at them. Just look at them. And they would melt. They were apologizing for everything that's ever happened on the planet. They were just broken. We had another child that when you just walked toward them and they knew they were in trouble, they'd freak out. They'd lock up. Ah! They couldn't handle the tension, which made for some really awkward scenes in restaurants. But they would totally freak out. We had a third child who would carry not just the punishment you were going to give them, but they would continually punish themselves. So you may punish them, and they would go to their room, and they'd be like, "How could I do that? How could I be so stupid? I must be terrible." And they would just beat themselves down. We had to watch our words with this one because they took it very seriously. And then we had a 4th child. It didn't matter what the punishment was. It was all a challenge. They'd get an old school whooping and be like, "Is that all you got? You can't bring more than that, old man? That didn't hurt." Completely different approach than the first 3. Know your children. Study your children. Discipline carefully. But we help set boundaries as we discipline. And then the last part of that passage says, when they're old, they'll not depart from it. They know what you've taught them. They know what your home is established on and based on. Proverbs 13 and 22, it says, "A good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children." We pass this on. They know what life should look like. They know the path that we've trained them to go down, the go part of life. But here's the challenge, and I wish I had the answer for this, and I don't. But here's the challenge that as parents we all face. They grow up, we've trained them, we've taught them, but it doesn't always go the way it should. Even Solomon wrote that when they grow old, they won't soon depart from it, but at the same time, he wrote about the children who grow up to be fools. He wrote about the children who go on their own path. You see, we train them up, we send them in the right direction, but they must choose, am I going to walk with Jesus myself or not? We can have them in the right schools, we can give them the right diet, we can pray the right prayers, we can use the right fabric softeners, we can make sure they're watching the right shows, we can make sure they only have play dates with certain groups of friends, and they still may choose to go off and do their own thing. This is where we have to trust it in the hands of God. In a few weeks, I think it's 4 weeks from now, we're going to come back to Solomon's life. Because here's the bad news to a wise man. He didn't even follow his own wisdom at the end of his life. He actually bails on God's wisdom. He bails on God. After he asks the Lord, give me wisdom, you know what he does? He lives it out and then ditches it. And the results of that are seen when you look at his son who replaces him as king. He is a totally ungodly, out of control person. They will choose what they will do with the wisdom you give them. Parents, our job is to train them in the way they should go. Train them in the way they should go. Now let's talk to kids for a minute. If you are still living under your parents' roof, you still have a responsibility to them, and they are still responsible to you. Remember, now, in the time this was written, there was no one living in their parents' basement after 15 years old. You were out. And I know some of you going, amen, under your voice. But there's a responsibility to parents that goes all the way back in the Old Testament to the 10 Commandments. And one of the commandments that is given, one of the 10, is Exodus 20 and verse 12. And it's this: honor your father and mother, that your days may be prolonged in the land which the Lord your God is giving you. Honor your father and mother, so that you may live long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. This is a commandment with a promise. If you honor your father and mother, you'll live long. That's because they won't kill you. You'll live long in the land the Lord your God promises you. Now, this isn't just for way back then, because Paul in Ephesians chapter 6 reminds the church in Ephesus, hey, this is a promise God gave us. This is a command God gave us. Children, honor your father and mother. And some people would say, well, you know, I've got teens, or I'm a teenager. I'm supposed to be problematic. I'm supposed to be rebellious. This is just what happens at this age. If you are a teenager right now, I want to tell you, yes, you will stretch your wings out. You will try some different things, but do it in a God-honoring, wise way. You will begin to find out who God created you to be, how you are fearfully and wonderfully made, is what the Bible says. But it's not to be done in a way that's rebellious or dishonoring to parents or bringing disunity within your home. As a matter of fact, 2 Timothy chapter 3 says that one of the signs of the end times is that children will be disobedient to their parents. This is not necessarily a worldwide phenomenon. This is more so in our country. You go to many countries in the world, you don't see the same thing you see here. There's still an honor and respect. 1 Samuel 15 and verse 23, it says, for rebellion is like the sin of divination or witchcraft, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. It becomes about how we're trying to figure out what we want to do. There's a tension that can happen when the home becomes divided. We talked about this a little bit last week. And just like it can happen between husband and wife, it can happen between parents and children. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 8 and 9, it says, listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. They are a garland to grace your head and a chain to adorn your neck. Proverbs chapter 15 and verse 5, it says, a fool spurns a parent's discipline, but whoever heeds correction shows prudence. Children, follow your parents' leading in wisdom as they follow Christ. Now, for those who are obstinate or stubborn, listen to the picture God gives us in this next passage. Proverbs chapter 30 and verse 17. It says, the eye that mocks a father, that scorns an aged mother, will be pecked out by the ravens of the valley and will be eaten by the vultures. I want you to read that to your 4-year-old tonight, right before bedtime. Night, night, cupcake. There's a blessing that goes with honoring your parents. There's a curse that goes with not. There's a blessing that goes with honoring your parents. I want to challenge you. Bring peace to your home. Be a blessing to your home. In doing so, it actually brings a blessing on you. Here's the second passage we're going to look at together. It's Proverbs 23, verse 22 through 25, page 465 in the Bibles and the seat backs. It says, listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. Buy the truth and do not sell it. Wisdom, instruction, and insight as well. The father of a righteous child has great joy. A man who fathers a wise son rejoices in him. May your father and mother rejoice. May she who gave you birth be joyful. If you are still under your parents' roof, I want you to hear this. Your parents want you to succeed. They want to celebrate you doing well. They want to celebrate you living in wisdom. They want you to succeed. They want you to be blessed. If you're a parent in the room and you agree with that, would you say amen? Amen. Please hear me on this one. If you're a child under your parents' roof, they want you to be blessed. They want what's best for you. Don't take that for granted. Let me read a few other Proverbs along the same line. Proverbs chapter 10 and verse 1. It says, a wise son brings joy to his father, but a foolish son brings grief to his mother. Proverbs 17:21. To have a fool for a child brings grief. There is no joy for the parent of a godless fool. Proverbs 17 and verse 25. A foolish son brings grief to his father, and bitterness to the mother who bore him. Proverbs 15 and verse 20, it says, a wise son brings joy to his father, but a foolish man despises his mother. Let me pause right here and tell you this. If you're not married yet, maybe you're not even close, but when it comes time, ladies, to look for a husband, gentlemen, when you start looking for a wife, watch how they interact with their parents. I'm not saying they have to agree on everything, because they probably won't. But they've shown a direct correlation, the way children respond and treat their parents, to how they'll respond and treat their spouse. Watch the way children relate to their parents as grown-ups, because there is a tie. And you'll see the same thing in your marriage as well. Proverbs chapter 19, verse 26. It says, whoever robs their father and drives out their mother is a child who brings shame and disgrace. Proverbs 20 and verse 20, if someone curses their father or mother, their lamp will be snuffed out in pitch darkness. Proverbs 30 verse 11, there are those who curse their fathers and do not bless their mothers. Last one, Proverbs 23 verse 15 and 16, it says, my son, if your heart is wise, then my heart will be glad indeed. My inmost being will rejoice when your lips speak what is right. If you're still at home, be a blessing to your home. Use wisdom. It's not always easy. It's not always easy. If you're still in your home, there are going to be moments where your parents are going to drive you up a wall. You're going to feel like they're oppressing you with everything they do. You're going to find yourself being in a place where you're going to say, would you stop asking me questions? Just give me a little time to breathe. You're going to wonder why there's all these rules and regulations. Deep down inside, you're going to ask yourself, was I adopted? Did they lie to me about all this? Was I adopted? Because I am not like them. But hear this, the blessing you bring to the home will come back on you. The curse you bring to the home will do the same. Be a blessing in your home. And I want to close with a very similar statement to what I made last week in closing. The rule of our house should be love. The rule of our house should be love. In the Lakeside room, family room, if you're watching online, in the room, can we just repeat that together? Ready? The rule of the house should be love. Let's say it again. The rule of the house should be love. Why? Kids, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Your parents don't always get it right. I know that's a shock to you. Cut them some slack. Give them some grace. Let the rule of the house be love. Parents, newsflash, your kids are going to mess up sometimes. The rule of the house should be love. Last week we talked about it with husbands and wives, and the fact that usually in the heat of the moment when we need to practice love the most is usually the point when we think about love the least. When we're arguing about the finances or the vacation or where we should move furniture, the last thing we think is, stop! Am I showing love? Is my tone loving? When it comes to our kids and they're driving us up a wall and they're pushing all the limits and we're just tired of dealing with it, are we thinking to ourselves, stop! They need to hear love from my voice. They need a hug. Go and hug your 16-year-old at that moment. They'll love it. Let the tone, let the rule of your house be love. I know I've said this before, but the older I get, the more I appreciate this. I never doubted that my mom loved me. She passed away about 6 or 7 years ago now. I never doubted that my mom loved me. I may have been in trouble. I may have been grounded. I may have been getting scolded for not doing homework. I may have been getting a whooping, but I never doubted that my mom loved me, ever. I think my dad wanted to take me out a few times, but I never doubted that my mom loved me. It was a gift, but it's a gift that God has given us parents. We start the example, we set the tone. And kids, I want to challenge you, those of you who are under your parents' covering, be a blessing to them, respect them, honor them, realize they are working for your good. It's hard to let go sometimes, and I think all the parents would agree. It's hard letting go for that next step. It's hard sometimes recognizing they're not a child anymore. Let the rule of the house be love. And you may say, how do I even do that? I mean, it sounds great, isn't it? It's got to be more than just the feeling of the moment. We're going to end with the same chapter and verses we ended with last week in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It's up on the screens. And if you're wondering what does love look like lived out in our home, just like last week, the underlined words are the action words with what love is. It's how love plays itself out in our homes and our relationships, in our marriage and with our kids. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Here's a promise to you. As a parent, you'll get it wrong sometimes. But the Bible tells us love covers a multitude of sins. As a child, as a student, you're going to get it wrong sometimes. But love covers a multitude of sins. Let love be the rule of our homes. As you're laying down discipline, parents, as you're setting boundaries, let love be the rule of the home. If you're still under your parents' covering, if you're asking questions, if you don't know why, the tone you ask in, the way you have the discussion, let love be the tone. Let love be the rule of the home. Why? Because love never fails. So if it never fails, how often is it going to fail? Never. It's not a trick question. Let's try it again. If love never fails, then how often is it going to fail? Never. Love never fails. Would you bow your